as you guys can tell, I'm fairly passionate about suspension. There's a few springs and such here. I've been lifting trucks since I was 15 years old. I bought my first surf and made a ridiculously big lift because you couldn't buy them, machined everything up and fingered a bunch of stuff as you do. Blew heaps of diffs, lots of diffs. 2 in 1 weekend, 3 in 1 weekend, you name it. CVs and axles flying everywhere. Anyhow, long story short, 2012 to 2020 Colorados and 2012 to 2020 Isuzu DMAX. I've owned one of these vehicles. I'm super familiar with the suspension system, know the ins and outs of them through the various different models. I know when the Colorados went to a sealed type wheel bearing. I know that aftermarket tyre rod ends have got over 10 to 15 degrees less misalignment. I know that Black Hawk upper control arms are welded to a forging and non-compliant in New Zealand. I know the things, I know the shocks need to be 510 to 515 extended. So anyway, there's a heap of things that can influence droop travel, plunge and bind, and it's not always the same thing, but I'll run you through just based on these vehicles. So the first thing is there's 3 fixed upper control arms that are readily available in our market. Only one of them is fit for purpose, you could say. And the reason being is the length and the geometry of it. So what happens when you lift a vehicle is your track width gets thinner. So as the arms droop down, and this is a factory DMAX one, the only thing that's about that short is Mitzi, sorry Chevelle, but when you're running a big lift, as you can see this arc, it restricts the actual width. So what happens is you'll get negative camber, right? So to combat that, they're bringing your eccentric camber and caster lobes inwards to correct it. Now the 2 things that this does is it reduces your droop travel, so those lobes coming inwards reduce your droop travel, and it also causes the CV to bottom out internally and or increase the operating angle. Now, this is just a random CV, it's actually an RX-7 one, but this has only got so much throw right. So when you're on a big angle like this, and then you lift the vehicle up more, it bottoms out internally. So when you try to rotate it, you'll get this wheel hop like this. Now, these other upper control arms that are on the market, the Black Hawk ones are welded to a forging. They do make some good products, but in New Zealand you cannot do that. And B, they're too short. So what that does is, if you've got a diff drop, this issue is even worse. You picture your track width being here. Now this axle might be 700 long. When you go closer to the end of the radius, it'll increase to 720 long. So what that means is a diff drop will make that issue worse. It's hard to get your head around, but you look at that minute arm there and the length of that arm being at say 700, and then when you go to there, the actual axle is as long as it's going to get. Now, the best way on these vehicles, there's 2 very important things. One is run these upper control arms. They'll give you a significant amount more droop travel, normally at least 25 mil. And the reason being is this one's roughly 245 from the ball joint with it at a 90-degree angle to the bush, and these are 270. So thus you're going to be running your lower eccentric camber and caster lobes outwards more, and also it's built in so the ball joint doesn't operate on a huge angle at ride height. Both of these things obviously mean that you're going to get a far better alignment, you're going to get a wider track width, and when you start thinking about 20 millimeters on that actual axle itself, it's going to pull it out so it's back to its original style track width without it being bottomed out internally. You don't want to start cheating and like pulling all those lobes the whole way in. Generally the 2 things that would cause you to have to do that with the alignment is either you haven't got an arm that's suited for your lift height, or you've just wound the vehicle up too high. Which can happen is there's a large variance between high and low spec vehicles, and obviously all your accessories and whatnot, which is obviously why we stress the point of you going down that cert route to run an adjustable height coilover, because you can wind the spring seat down. It is obviously a very hard balance between if you get too light a spring rate, you have to run too much preload and you can induce coil bind. If you get too heavy a spring, you're going to sacrifice ride comfort for that. Now obviously being that the shock is positioned on that lower control arm, the more that you push it out, it will change the operating angle of that shock and the ratio that it runs on. So if it's the whole way in versus the whole way out, it does have a slight effect on your spring rate. It's amazing if you do an alignment on a car and you've say got 30 mil droop travel, and then you push all your lobes out and everything and remeasure the droop travel, especially certain vehicles, for instance, like the MP300, if you've got a 3-inch lift and you do go to an adjustable upper control arm and you have someone experienced enough to clock that in correctly, you can gain at least 25 mil droop travel. So this particular vehicle, the things that I would stress the point of is A, these are the only fixed upper control arm that works. There's an aluminium one, it doesn't work, you'll get plunge and bind issues, I guarantee it. And then the other one is the forged one that is welded to the forging. A, that's not compliant for road use in New Zealand. B, the track width is too thin, you'll get plunge and bind issues, you'll lack droop travel, and you'll have to have those lobes the whole way in. So the next thing is with your tyre ends, the inner rack ends on those cars, we found that you can't run aftermarket ones, you need to run genuine. And if you check out Shane at Full Send in Taupo did a really good video on this back in the day, and he'd made strengthening sleeves and whatnot. And don't quote me on the exact figure, but I believe that, say, the aftermarket one had 23 degrees of misalignment and the genuine one had 40 or something astronomical like that. So I've checked that with a lot of different components on the market, like it does pay if they are readily available to go genuine. But obviously you can see this one here, say at your 2 to 3 inch lift, the ball joint's at a nice operating angle, it's not close to bind or anything like that. And then if you put this same arm on the same operating angle, not only is it a long way in, which is going to shorten your track width, reduce your droop travel, and obviously cause you to have to pull those camber and caster lobes inwards to get rid of the negative camber. So something very interesting. The main reason I've done this is I've got a guy, he's been horrific on the emails saying he's going to slag us off online and all of this kind of stuff. Like, we're here to help, but we don't make those particular upper control arms. It's out of our control when someone wants to buy them, and this is just the facts of what fixes it. I've fixed it more times than I could count in the workshop. I've had lifts come that have been fitted by a basic tyre shop that perhaps doesn't quite have the knowledge base yet. I've owned those vehicles. We design the extended lengths of the shocks to suit running with our upper control arms that work and are compliant. I have done videos on this in the past, a long time ago kind of thing, but I just thought it'd be a good refresh that might save people from buying the wrong products. When you're here to help and you're trying to do your best and you haven't sold them those upper control arms, it makes it really challenging to get them a good result, obviously, because it's not a product that you've manufactured. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts.